first, though, the cost of living crisis is hitting most businesses hard, not least those in the leisure industry. There are warnings we could be facing a national crisis if gyms and leisure centres don't get the support they need over the coming months. That's according to UK Active, which represents thousands of gyms, leisure centres and other sport bodies across the country. Mark Clues is chair of the Kidsgrove Sports Centre community group, which runs Kidsgrove Leisure Centre. I caught up with him earlier and asked him how things have been since they reopened 4 months ago following a massive refurbishment.
It's been a really positive start. It's been fantastic to see so many people utilising the centre and helping to improve their mental, physical and social wellbeing, and the feedback is exceptionally positive from everybody who comes in. So it's been great to see people returning who maybe used it 5 years ago, and also seeing plenty of new visitors who are coming for the first time and utilising the facilities.
Do you think it gets a little bit busier as well once things get back to a routine back in September?
We obviously had an initial surge of everybody really wanting to come to the centre, but then it did maintain itself, and it has maintained itself throughout September and October, so it's been really positive. And I mean, we're obviously having half term and lots of activities this week taking place. Again, we hope to see as many people as possible. I mean, as a community centre, a facility where it's funded by the people who visit, we need as many people as possible to come to those doors to help us, really.
Absolutely. And how are your energy bills looking at the moment?
I think for the industry, that's the biggest concern. So for us personally, it's about £35,000 a month at the moment, energy bills, which is a challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge that everybody in the leisure industry faces. And really, again, like I say, the only way we can to really utilise and hopefully be able to pay those bills in the longer term is to try and generate as many people through the doors as possible.
And £35,000 now is in comparison with what were you paying before?
So our initial projections when we first planned this out 3 or 4 years ago was that it would have been about £70,000 for the whole year. So you can see that when it's £35,000 a month, it's considerably different. Getting close to obviously launching date, we revised all the projections and we were probably looking at around 20,000. So you can see that it's gone from 20,000 a month to 35,000, and it could go particularly higher in the winter. The longer term projections are that some of the costs could even double in January, for example.
And how tough is that right now?
I think it's something that obviously I think everybody's well aware of. It's an external factor that we've got no control over. It is the biggest pressure on ourselves, but it's the biggest pressure on the leisure industry. I think the latest facts are that about 2 swimming pools a week are closing at the moment, and 70 have gone already this year. So I think everybody is now trying to find ways to do more, but also do it for less, shall we say, at the moment at the same time.
Have you taken any measures yet to cut the amount of energy that you're using?
Well, the facility, with it being modern and refurbished, is fitted with LED lighting in all the sensors, for example, so that takes down that usage to as minimal as possible. It's been insulated. The swimming pool equipment is the most efficient it can be. We operate our pool at 29 degrees, which is what we recommended for a leisure swimming pool, and it's really important for us to make sure the environment is as comfortable as possible. But it's one of those cases where it's going to be harder for us to try and reduce our energy usage. We're having a modern building. We are probably as efficient as we could be without probably looking at more renewables and different ways of doing it. But again, that's considerable cost. And I think that's got to be our next focus, really, on what ways can we bring down the overall usage. I don't think we're going to really be able to make many cuts on the kilowatt hours we use every single day, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Is it an option to close the swimming pool at different times altogether in order to save money, do you think?
For us, no, we don't want to go down any sort of service cuts. We are passionate and proud to be able to try and offer a community facility which is accessible to everybody and affordable to everybody. So it almost goes against our charitable ethos to start trying to look to cut those services. So we will do everything in our powers to try and ensure we can pay them bills. Obviously, our main focus at the moment is trying to drive as many people through the doors as possible. So if everybody comes to use it, every single penny goes back into that centre. But I mean, especially in the longest term, if in the worst case scenario we can't pay the bills, then ultimately we'll have to go and see what other options are available for us.
And how concerned are you about further increases to energy prices at the moment?
I think it's one of these things where it's something that we're aware of, but at the end of the day, the energy price fluctuates quite a lot. I think there's no point us overly stressing about something we can't control. And it's an industry-wide thing. So plenty of other people and leisure operators across the country are all saying exactly the same, that the energy costs are crippling, especially if you've got a swimming pool, for example. That is one of the most expensive elements that you have in a leisure industry. So I think we're trying to be pragmatic about everything at the moment and thinking that let's just see where we are when we get to that point. And if we're in the stronger position we can be, which we all focus on doing, and having as many people using the facility as possible, then we should be able to pay the bills. And obviously that has got to be our number one priority. Let's get as many people as possible into the facility and utilising it. And then hopefully we don't have to worry about the negative effect of if those prices do double in January.
Do you think we will see gyms and leisure centres forced to close over this?
It's happening at the moment, so I think the answer to that is yes. I think it's the biggest concern to the industry. If you think about any industry, it used to be that utilities were probably your second biggest cost behind your wages, but now utilities are now your largest cost. And I think that, you're seeing 2 swimming pools a week closing. There's talk that operators are looking to cut back and find ways of closing down some facilities. What you may find is that more facilities will have to go community-owned like ourselves, so they'll have to look at the charitable models and operate in that way. But again, I suppose that you are very much having to weigh up that you are operating a building which has got utility costs of £35,000 a month. And I mean, for ourselves, we burn 818 kilowatt hours a day. So probably what the average house uses in 5 years is what we get through in a day.
What support would you like to see come your way?
I think for us personally, the government scheme which has been announced is welcomed. It does lower the cost, but it only tackles a unit cost. It doesn't tackle all the extra additions that go on to the energy bills. And we're not protected by any such price cap previous to this. So I think what we'd like to see is that this support is ensured and continued for a longer term. I think we also need some support for people, especially who've got swimming pools, for example. I mean, that is your biggest problem. I think if you were just a general gym operator, yes, you'll feel the effects, but your biggest cost there is lighting, effectively, in your air conditioning. Whereas they haven't got that vast cost of heating all that water and cooling that air and heating the air, for example, that's around that facility. So I think that the government does need to look to try and provide some support for public leisure facilities as they exist.
The Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport have sent us a statement that says we provided an unprecedented £1 billion to ensure the survival of the grassroots professional sport and leisure sectors during the pandemic. We know grassroots sports organisations are again under pressure, which is why we've introduced the Energy Bill Relief Scheme. It will mean they pay wholesale energy costs well below half of expected prices this winter.